Okie dokie, we're back. We're back with more F1 content. The last time I did an F1 video, I ranked the 2023 seasons of the F1 grid from what is now last year. And it did quite well. It got quite a lot of interaction. A few people found it very controversial. A few people thought I was absolutely washed. So I'm going to give you another opportunity to shout at me and tell me how washed I am. Because what I'm now going to do is rank every Formula One world champion in the history of the goddamn sport, man. Shout out to Josh at work for suggesting this one. We're just going to have to get straight into it, aren't we? We've got all of the champions down here. I've added Max Verstappen in there. He's a world champion, whether you like it or not. I wasn't around for a lot of these to actually see them race. So obviously I am not the all-seeing oracle when it comes to every world champion ever. I have done some research, I've looked at stats, I've looked at highlights and looked at clips, but you can never get the full picture. If any of you guys watching experienced some of the drivers that kind of predate my Formula One fandom and think that I've got it wrong and that I am washed and don't get it, tell me about your favorite driver, tell me why I should have ranked them higher, because I didn't watch all of these at their peak. We're starting off with Mika Hakkinen now. So I've got some stats here on my phone. 161 races, 26 pole positions, 20 wins, and 2 titles. And of course, those titles coming up against the great Michael Schumacher. Mika Hakkinen, I'm going to throw, it's between B and C, but I'm going to throw him in the B section for now. Hakkinen had a lot of raw pace, very skilled, very talented, very brave Formula One driver, very fast over one lap as well. And if you're beating Michael Schumacher, I know it wasn't dominant Schumacher, what we would call peak Schumacher, but he still went head to head with him in 99, 2000 and was able to defeat him. Hakkinen's going in the B. Jacques Villeneuve now, came from IndyCar in fact, raced 163 times, won 11 times, got 13 pole positions and got 1 world title. Now, by all accounts, Jacques was a very, very quick Formula One driver. I don't think he was as quick as Hakkinen, for example. 1 title, 11 wins. It's a decent return. Oh, it's C and D, isn't it? It's C. I'm going to go for C for now. Moving on to Damon Hill, who, as a pundit and commentator, I find very frustrating. However, we're separating that. We're looking at the racer, not the man, is what we're looking at here. 115 races, so less than Villeneuve. 20 poles and 22 wins, far more than Villeneuve. And 1 world championship title, the same as Villeneuve. I would put Hakkinen ahead of him in terms of raw speed. I don't think Damon Hill was ever as quick as Mika Hakkinen was over 1 lap, but a consistent racing driver nonetheless from what I've seen. So I'm putting him in B, fairly level with Mika Hakkinen. Alain Prost, I can't do the accents. Alain Prosto raced 199 times, got 33 pole positions, won 51 Grand Prix, and got 4 world titles. Was also teammate for a lot of that period where he was winning his races and his titles with Ayrton Senna. Of the two, I was always more of a Senna fan. I preferred the raw pace, the brash, the if you don't go for a gap, you are no longer a racing driver. I like that kind of driver more, whereas Prost is the more calculating and the more cunning and sort of sly almost driver who took a lot of care with the setup. Alain Prost for me, 4 world championships, 51 wins, teammates with Ayrton Senna for most of that, is an S-tier Formula One driver, one of the greats of all time, and would be in my top 5, no doubt. Alain Prost is straight in S. Prost and Senna were the best 2 drivers in Formula One, and they were in the same team, and they were slugging it out week in, week out. Nigel Mansell, that sounded like Paul McCartney, not Nigel Mansell next, who raced 186 times, took 32 pole positions, 31 wins, and 1 world title. That 1 world title is underrates Nigel Mansell. He is one of the drivers, and there's another one on this list glaringly, who didn't fulfill his whole potential. To win 31 Grand Prix, take 32 poles, and only win 1 championship title, a dominant title though it might have been, He came back out of retirement. Imagine that, the first time Nigel Mansell retired, he hadn't won a world title. I find that ridiculous, but he was electrically quick. Everyone spoke, when it comes to Nigel Mansell, about his bravery, because back then bravery mattered, and he could find time by just putting his foot down and grinning and bearing it, where no one else could find that grip and that pace. Prodigious talent, incredible speed. Nigel Mansell is going in my A tier. Moving on to Ayrton Senna, and well, you've heard me talk about Alain Prost, so it will come as no surprise that Senna is going in my S tier, and Senna is in fact going ahead of Alain Prost, in my opinion. So the same again really goes. He was fighting against the other fastest driver of his era. I've gone for Senna over Prost, and I think that just comes to personal preference in the end because they're so evenly matched. He started 161 Grand Prix. He got 65 pole positions, won 41 times, and won 3 world titles. Of course, his life was tragically cut short at Imola in '94, I believe. He would have won more races. He most likely would have won at least one more world championship at some point. He was only 33, 34 when he died, had a few more years, 4 or 5 years left in him. I'm fully confident he would have been a 4 or a 5-time world champion had that never happened. The fastest Formula One driver over 1 lap that has ever lived. Win or nothing mentality that I love in a Formula One driver. This is what I look for in a Formula One driver. He's going in S, and he might well be my number 1 of all time. Let me think about that. Nelson Piquet, who by all accounts, based on recent behaviour and comments, is not a very nice chap, not someone that I'd want to go for a pint with, but he is someone that I would want driving my Formula One car because he raced 203 times, took 24 poles, got 23 wins and won 3 world titles. Very strong return. In terms of poles and wins numbers, it's fairly similar to Mika Hakkinen, but also raced more Grand Prix. I think has got to go in the B section. And look, I never watched Nelson Piquet at the peak A of his powers, but I just feel like Mika Hakkinen was so quick. I believe that if those two were in a team together in their primes, Hakkinen would still win. And I'm doing this in their prime, by the way. I didn't mention this, but I'm basing this off of prime. Niki Lauda, a remarkable man. 171 races, 24 poles, 25 wins, and a 3-time world champion. A class act. Rush just gave a whole new perspective on the whole dynamic. Lauda and Hunt, an unbelievable competitor to fight back from his injuries and still win world titles after that 76 Nürburgring horror crash where his car caught fire and gave him life-changing injuries. He came back, nearly won the title that year, would have done if not for the crash, but then went on to win more world championships. An incredible man, so much respect for Niki Lauda. What he did with the Mercedes team in recent memory as well has to be commended. Niki Lauda is going in A. He's going above Nigel Mansell in the A section. Father of Nico, of course, Keke Rosberg. Raced 114 times, only took 5 poles, only won 5 races, got 1 world championship win, but I believe he only won that title A, by winning 1 race, which was the final race of the season, I think, and B, because several drivers, including Nigel Mansell, suffered horrendous bad luck in the final Grand Prix, including a tyre blowout, I think. Keke Rosberg, I don't particularly rate. Only winning 5 Grand Prix. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo's got more than that. Sergio Perez, I think, has won more Grand Prix than Keke Rosberg. I don't rate him very highly, I'm sorry. You know, 5 poles, 5 wins, 1 title, 114 races. Only won that championship through luck. Keke Rosberg's going in the E category. Sorry, Keke. Sorry, Nico. Neither of you are watching. Alan Jones, who I think is quite an underrated Formula One driver looking at these stats. I didn't know much about Alan Jones, but he's raced 116 times, got 6 poles, but 12 wins, double the wins than his poles, and won 1 world title. Alan Jones, I don't know much about you, my friend, but that's not a bad return. So Jones moves in ahead of Villeneuve. I wish I knew more about you. Educate me. I need it, clearly. So Jody Scheckter, 112 races, very, very similar to Jones. 3 pole positions, not great, but 10 wins and 1 title. I don't know much about Jody Scheckter, so it's hard for me to judge, but based on those numbers, I'm going to go with Jody Scheckter in C for now, and see how I feel about it in a bit. Next we have Andretti. Mario Andretti is a very famous name in motorsport. 128 races, 18 pole positions, 12 wins, and 1 world title for Mario Andretti. Andretti was quick. I'm going to put Andretti at the front of the C section for now. I'm going to give him a C section and get him at the front of that queue. Next we have James Hunt. 92 races, which is not a lot. 14 poles and 10 wins in 92 races. Look, the man was gifted, lightning quick. The year he won that title against Lauda is one of the greatest title fights of all time. The only thing is he didn't have, the film portrays the fact that he didn't have the desire to keep going. He won his title, had his crowning moment, and then from that second tailed off and slipped away into retirement. We're looking at peak here. We're looking at prime James Hunt. And prime James Hunt was very quick. And for his aura as well, that counts for something. And what he did for the sport, that counts for something. I'm going to put him at the back of the B tier for James Hunt. If he'd have had the drive and determination and desire, he could well be pushing A. Emerson Fittipaldi won 2 world championships, 144 races, only 6 poles, but 14 wins. And based on those stats, again, I didn't witness much of Fittipaldi, but I'm going to put him in and around the B section. Okay, so Sir Jackie Stewart, only 99 races, but he took 17 poles, 27 wins, and won 3 world titles. He's going straight in the A section for me. A fantastic career. To be a 3-time world champion and only compete in 99 races. I know that seasons were shorter back then, but it's still not as many as, quite a few on this list. 17 poles, 27 wins, 3 world titles, and of course founded the Stewart team, which actually, in the end, went on to become Red Bull. Not that that counts for anything to do with this list, but I think Jackie Stewart is an A-tier driver for me. Jochen Rindt took 10 pole positions in 60 races, won 6 Grand Prix in 60 races, and got 1 world title. Not very many races, and to get pole position in a 6th of your Grand Prix, that's not bad. 6 wins though, I'm not too sure about. Jochen Rindt, I think he's just going to go into the C section. Again, never saw him race, don't know much about him. 1 world championship and only 6 wins. In fact, no, I'm going to drop that down to the D actually. Next, we've got Graham Hill, 177 races, 13 pole positions, 14 wins, and 2 world titles. That's a very strong return. I'm going for Hill Senior over Hill Junior, quite comfortably actually. I would put Graham Hill, I'm actually going to put him ahead of PK in behind Hakkinen in the B tier. Danny Hulme. 112 races, only 1 pole, but did get 8 wins and that world title. That screams D to me. Only 1 pole position in 112 races, which for them, that's quite a few races throughout a career. Jack Brabham, 3 world titles, 14 wins, and 13 poles. They are the standout numbers there. I'm going to go at the top of B. I'm going to put him ahead of Hakkinen, just in behind Stewart for now. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out. Jack Brabham with a legendary name, 3 world championships. You can't really, you can't say fairer than that really, unless of course you win more. Jim Clark only raced 72 times, but in those races got 33 pole positions and 25 wins. 2 titles, and his life was cut tragically short. He would have won more titles and more races, no doubt about it. Jim Clark is going in my A tier. He's going ahead of Stewart and Mansell. I've got so much respect for Jim Clark. That percentage of that win rate in the amount of races he did. So young when he passed away, so much more potential. He's going in the A, and I rank him ahead of Mansell and Stewart personally. Moving on to John Surtees, who actually won Sports Personality of the Year, interestingly enough, did John. 116 races, 8 poles, 6 wins, 1 title. That is the C, I think, for me. I'm going to put him ahead of Jody Scheckter. What can I say? Sports Personality of the Year winner. Moving on now to Phil Hill. 48 races, not that many. 6 poles, 3 wins, and 1 title. I'm sorry if I'm putting Keke Rosberg in the E. I'm putting Phil Hill in the E. Winning a world title with only 3 Grand Prix victories to your name. That's incredible. How have you managed that? I'm sorry, Phil. Don't know much about your career, but I can't give you any higher than the E section. Mike Hawthorne now. Fairly similar story. 4 poles, even less than Hill. 3 wins, 1 title, 45 races. I'm sorry, Hawthorne, you're going in the E section. I mean, stats, they can be manipulated. They don't mean everything, but come on. Come on. Juan Manuel Fangio. 51 races. Only 51 races. I know that seasons were incredibly short in the era of Juan Manuel Fangio. Only 51, but he got 29 poles, took 24 wins, and won 5 world titles. He has to go in the S tier. To win 5 titles in that era, he was so dominant. Apparently he would win by minutes on end. Pretty much unbeatable. No teammate ever got near him. Nobody ever really got near him. For that era of Formula One, you think the big chunky wide cars, you think of the helmets and the steampunk goggles and the big circular steering wheel drifting through corners. That's Fangio's era. He was the best. He's going in the S tier. Farina now. Giuseppe Farina, Formula One's first ever world champion. 34 races, only 5 poles, only 5 wins, only 1 title. I'm going to be very kind to Farina and give him the D section just because he was the first ever world champion, the first man to take a world title. Just gives him the edge over Keke, Phil and Mike in the E. So I'm going to put him right at the back of the D section. That's just me being really kind. That's just me being a really nice guy, okay? Alberto Ascari. Bring yourself to me, son. 32 races, 14 poles, 13 wins, 2 titles. That's a very strong return. That is very comparable with the likes of your sort of Damon Hills, even Mika Hakkinen has that kind of... Hakkinen won more races, but still 2 titles. I put Ascari behind Hakkinen, Hill, Piquet, Fittipaldi. I'm going to put Ascari ahead of Hunt in the B section because 14 poles, 13 wins and 2 world titles in the time of, his time as well. So we're talking Fangio era, I believe. So Ascari, I'm going in B. And if I'm getting my F1 history muddled up, I was born in 2001. Educate me in the comments. Be nice about it. Okay, so moving on to Lewis Hamilton. Oh, Lewis Hamilton. Statistically, the greatest of all time. 103 wins, I think. The most pole positions in history as well. 7 world titles, the joint most in history. Lewis Hamilton. However, level on points with Fernando Alonso in his first season. He was a rookie. Incredible rookie season. Okay, unbelievable rookie season. Level with Fernando Alonso. Beaten by Jenson Button when they were teammates. Nico Rosberg, he had the measure of. Rosberg got a title over him, but overall Hamilton was the better driver. He's currently with George Russell, is sort of 1-1 there, 1 season apiece, although he did wipe the floor with Russell this year, and comfortably had the measure of Valtteri Bottas. Now Lewis Hamilton is undoubtedly a great, one of the greats, but I don't think he's an S-tier driver. Come at me, bro. I think if you put Lewis Hamilton in the same car as Juan Manuel Fangio, Alain Prost or Ayrton Senna, he gets beaten. If he gets beaten by Jenson Button, he gets beaten by those. And yes, we can't judge one driver on a tricky few years against a decent driver. He's always been very quick over 1 lap. He's got incredible race awareness and knows what's going on. But I think recently, when he's not been in the dominant car, like Mercedes was just the dominant car of its era, his racecraft does leave something to be desired. He makes a few mistakes, as I know everyone does, but he does push the barrier sometimes in terms of... There are drivers like Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso who I think expose him a bit. When they push him towards the edge, he fumbles, he makes mistakes. We saw it at Silverstone in 2021. We've seen it this year. George Russell around the outside. What is he doing? He understeered into Sergio Perez. That move on Piastri in Monza, what's he doing? And yes, we're talking prime, peak Lewis Hamilton, which is of course the Mercedes dominant years. But I'm standing by it. Senna beats him, Prost beats him, Fangio beats him. A for Lewis Hamilton. Moving on to Nico Rosberg, beat Lewis Hamilton in equal machinery, of course. And I think Nico Rosberg is quite an underrated Formula One driver. Beat Schumacher when they were teammates, by no means was that peak Schumacher. But in 206 races, he got 30 pole positions, was very quick over 1 lap, 23 wins, One world title with Lewis Hamilton as his teammate. Got very lucky in that season. Yes, Hamilton, without that engine failure in Malaysia, would have won the title, don't get me wrong. But I think Nico's a very capable, very strong, very quick Formula One driver. I would put him around the Hakkinen, Hill, Piquet, Fittipaldi sort of area. Gonna put Nico Rosberg in the B section, and I'm gonna put him ahead of James Hunt, Alberto Ascari and Damon Hill. Quite an underrated Formula One driver, and he never got outclassed by a teammate. He ran Hamilton so close. Hamilton had the measure of him, but it was close, you know? Moving on then to Sebastian Vettel. 299 races, 57 poles, 53 wins, 4 world titles. The 4th greatest Formula One driver in history according to the stats. He won those races in the fastest car in the field, as Schumacher did, as Hamilton did, as for the last 2 years Verstappen is doing now. Not in 2021, the Red Bull was slower than the Mercedes across the season. I'm gonna die on that hill. You need the fastest car to win titles in Formula One, or at least a fast car. That's why Hamilton won loads of titles, that's why Schumacher won loads of titles. I don't hold that against Vettel. But then Daniel Ricciardo came into the team and beat him pretty comfortably. And then he moved to Ferrari. And although he beat an aging Kimi Raikkonen, he didn't destroy an aging Kimi Raikkonen. On his day, Raikkonen was faster. Then Charles Leclerc came into the Ferrari and wiped the floor with Vettel, dismantled him, destroyed him. Peak Sebastian Vettel is what we're ranking here, okay? And peak Sebastian Vettel was a brilliant Formula One driver. But does peak Sebastian Vettel beat anyone in the S tier? No, straight up. Does peak Sebastian Vettel beat anyone in the A tier? No. Straight up. Does peak Sebastian Vettel beat anyone in the B tier? Probably. Probably beats Hunt. Probably beats Ascari. Probably beats Damon Hill. I don't know if Nico Rosberg would get beaten by Vettel, you know. I think that would be very close. I give the nod to Vettel with his championships and his wins, but controversially, I think all of the drivers that you see ahead of Sebastian Vettel beat him in equal machinery. Again, at me. Vettel in B. Max Verstappen is my favourite Formula One driver, so I'm biased, and I'm trying to be objective about it. But let's have a look at the stats, okay? This stat pack is old, so as of right now, he's just gone ahead of Sebastian Vettel. I'm recording this at the end of the 2023 season. He's just gone ahead of Vettel's win record. He's a 3-time world champion. He's just had the best season in F1 history. Those records will never be beaten again. Yes, he's in the fastest car. So was Schumacher, so was Hamilton. Rosberg was a tougher teammate than Perez. Bottas, fairly level with Perez. But did Hamilton ever win as many races in that dominant car that Verstappen has won? No. Did Schumacher, who we'll get to, ever win as many races in that dominant car? No. Max Verstappen is 26 years old. Peak Max Verstappen is right here, right now. So it's very hard to rank him in this list. So I'm going to do it based off of my opinion. If you put them in a car, who does he beat? Well, straight away, he beats Hamilton. In the same car, Max Verstappen beats Lewis Hamilton. Peak Hamilton, peak Verstappen. 2021, the Mercedes on average was the faster car. Verstappen won the title, controversially. But over the course of the season, he deserved to win the title. Hamilton deserved to win that last race, don't get me wrong. Verstappen deserved to win the title. So Max Verstappen is an S-tier driver, is my logic. Shout at me in the comments. He beats Hamilton in equal machinery. I think he possibly beats Fangio, but it's too soon to say. It's too soon to say whether he beats Senna, Prost or Fangio, but he certainly runs them close. He certainly runs them close. And I'm doing this based off of 2023. I'm going to do this again when Max Verstappen retires or is in the twilight of his career, and I can see him being there. I can also see him being there, to be honest with you. But for now, he's there. Max Verstappen, S-tier driver. Shout at me. Jenson Button now beat Lewis Hamilton when they were teammates, but Pete Button, you would say, was in the brawn in terms of his title-winning year. I actually think he went up a gear at McLaren, but he had to beat Rubens Barrichello. Schumacher showed that that could be done. Is Jenson Button as good as Michael Schumacher? No. Look at what Hamilton's done. You can't. I would never say that Button's a better driver than Hamilton. He's by no means a quicker driver. Button was a much more mature driver, but never as quick, never as well-rounded. Certainly a very smooth driver and very consistent. 306 races is a lot. Only 8 poles. He wasn't the best over one lap. 15 wins and 1 world title, but it was in that dominant car. I'm going to put Jenson Button in the C. I think he's better than Jacques Villeneuve. Kimi Raikkonen now. Before Verstappen, Kimi was my favourite driver. So again, I'm biased. I'm going to try not to be. Let's pull up some stats on my man Kimi. 349 races, the second most experienced driver in the history of the sport. 18 poles, 21 wins, 1 world title. Of course, many people will know the Kimi Raikkonen that faded at the end of his career and started to phone it in a bit with Alfa Romeo and towards the end at Ferrari. But on his day, he was still matching Sebastian Vettel. On his day, peak Kimi Raikkonen, which wasn't in the Ferrari, it was in the McLaren, was the fastest driver in Formula One over 1 lap. In the races, yeah, he was a little bit less consistent than others. Super brave. There's that video of him just keeping his foot down through the fog at Spa. The wet race against Hamilton in Spa, yeah, he crashed out, but some of the driving he was doing to weave in between the back markers in impossible conditions was unbelievable. Peak Kimi Raikkonen over 1 lap is an A-tier driver, but he's not an A-tier driver overall. Where do you put him against Häkkinen, I think? I think Raikkonen's longevity hurts him a bit in that debate versus Häkkinen. Häkkinen burnt out, Raikkonen faded away. That's why he's going in the B. Fernando Alonso, the driver who sums up the phrase wasted potential. Fernando Alonso is and would undoubtedly be an S-tier driver if we looked at it in terms of would he beat Senna, Prost, Fangio, Verstappen? He'd be level with them. He'd be there or thereabouts. Look, Alonso against Verstappen today, I think Verstappen beats him in the same team. But peak Alonso in the 2012 Ferrari, well, that's one of the greatest seasons of all time. However, he burnt his bridges with a lot of teams. He made some poor career moves. We're factoring that in here, I think. We have to. Because unfortunately for Fernando Alonso, as great as he is, and he is great, 362 Grand Prix, the most experienced of all time, 22 poles, 32 wins, 2 titles, does not do him justice. He's better than that. He, for me, is on an absolute even keel with Lewis Hamilton. I think those two are pretty interchangeable. Alonso and Hamilton, pretty damn level for me. Which leaves us with Michael Schumacher now. 7 world titles for Michael Schumacher. 306 races, 68 poles, 91 wins. All of these were records until Hamilton came along. Of course, he had the Ferrari, which was the fastest car, but he built that team around him and won 2 world titles, don't forget, before being in that fastest car. He won those titles with Benetton, which, from what I remember, was not the fastest car in those seasons that he won the title. It's so tough. The Hamilton, Schumacher, Alonso conversation is the conversation for me. I think they're all very level, very interchangeable, but I'm gonna put Schumacher. His comeback underrates him as well, but he does have 7 world titles and 91 race wins. Does he beat Senna in the same car? Not in my opinion. Does he beat Prost in the same car? Not in my opinion. Does he beat Fangio in the same car? Not in my opinion. Does he beat Max in the same car? That would be spicy. We need to wait and see what Max does over the next few years, but I think Max will beat him. I think Max is too quick. Hamilton and Schumacher in the same car, level. Alonso and Schumacher in the same car, level. He's here, isn't he? He's in here. He's here. He's there. That's where he is. And you'll say I've overrated Max Verstappen, but come back in 5 years. He'll have moved up, not back. Oh my goodness. The controversy is real. Get in the comments. Let me know how washed I am. You're going to hate some of these opinions. You're going to think, what an idiot. But that's what I'm going for. It's my instinct. It's what I'm standing by. That is my tier list. Even if you disagree, like the video. If you disagree that much that you dislike it, let me know why in the comments. Comment below, subscribe to a homes near you, and remember, it's controversial, but we love the sport, and we can agree and be together in that. Yeah? It's love always. If you disagree with me, it's cool, man. You're just wrong. Bye-bye.